Hello and welcome to the Clear Your Wardrobe podcast. So this is my first episode. For those of you that are listening, you might recognise my voice, you might recognise who I am, but my name is Brandon and I am the creator and the known CEO of Clear Your Wardrobe at one item at a time, otherwise known as just Clear Your Wardrobe or CYW, however you want to kind of refer to me or it. So for those of you that are here as a first timer or a newcomer, Clear Wardrobe is a little business that I decided to create just based on a hobby that I've had for the last couple of years, and it's something that I actually fell into. I didn't plan it, I just kind of tried something out, got really invested and excited, and just decided, well, hang on, let me just create a non-official business for it and just kind of have a little community where I can kind of get similar people and people with similar minds and stuff in the same place. So at the moment, I'm at the beginning of the journey. You know, I've got the name, I've got the logo, I've got the website, the business cards, everything like that. I'm still working on the social profiles. So I've got a TikTok account, I've got an eBay account, I've got a Vinted account, I've got a Whatnot account, I've got an email address. I think that's kind of where I am at the moment. But I think for me, I just want to connect with as many different people as possible. And this podcast is obviously different to my other two podcasts that are on my original and my own branded channels, basically, if you want to call it that. But I'd like to have conversations with people about how they've got into selling, how they've got into reselling, if they're not really in the industry at all, you know, what they do. You know, just content creators, influencers, musicians, artists, whatever, and just kind of talk to them about podcasts and talk to them about, you know, being able to share their skills, their skill set, their interests, their hobbies and things like that, just as I am with the selling and reselling, but with them with their own thing. So this is kind of more of a showcase podcast, kind of sharing ideas and, you know, different types of people that are out there. And I think then blending that with the idea of selling and reselling, because I've got my normal podcast where I have my guests talking about themselves, their lives, their interests, their businesses, things like that. But I think this could be more that and a bit of like blending it with reselling and selling. So, you know, have people ever thought of doing selling? Have they ever started reselling stuff? Have they got stock that they need to get rid of? So it's just kind of making people go, oh, actually, that is a good idea. Or actually, that is something that I could potentially do. So, yeah, I'm not really too sure how those episodes will be different from my normal ones. But, yeah, I think this will have more of a twist or an inclusion of the selling and the reselling aspects rather than just, yeah, my name's John and I have a business of fashion or whatever. So, yeah, I guess I should introduce myself. So, yeah, I've been a content creator for as many years as I can remember. I'm originally from London, and yeah, like I said, Clear Your Wardrobe was set up in June 2026, so only a couple of months ago since this podcast has been released. And like I said, I'm just one of those individuals that I've got a lot of hobbies, a lot of interests, a lot of kind of side hustles. And I think over the last couple of years since COVID, I've just been trying to work out which ones will potentially actually bring money or which ones can actually give me some sort of presence online, and then which ones maybe I just do privately, or, you know, I just drop off and, you know, forget those ideas, leave those ideas in the past. So yeah, I think I've had a lot of different ideas, and yeah, a lot of ideas that have kind of come and gone basically. And I think it's also one of those things where, because my head is in all these different places, you know, and then I'm having people message me, trying to make plans, wanting to go for dinner, wanting to go away, things like that. As much as I probably do, my brain isn't really in the right place to kind of turn itself off, because I've got so many ideas. I just want to kind of get through as many things as I can, utilise my weekend, because as quick as the weekend starts, the weekend ends. So yeah, we have those 2 days, the whole of Saturday and the whole of Sunday, to kind of pump out content or edit content or do podcasts and things like that. And before you know it, you're back to your full-time job at work. So that's kind of why I say no to plans. That's why I try not to make a plan every single weekend, because I do need some time to myself and some time to, you know, put effort and time into the things that I eventually want to grow. Because if I don't, then they'll just keep growing very slowly or just not growing at all. And I think for me, my initial light bulb moment with selling and reselling was kind of around the time that I was at university. So this podcast isn't really about university, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But yeah, kind of moving out from halls into my second year flat. Obviously, I was in the same flat for my second and third year, which was amazing to have slightly different housemates. And then obviously from third year, moving back home, and then moving back home, moving to my new place. So I think the whole moving around and noticing that I had lots of stuff, lots of bags, lots of boxes, lots of just things that I was carrying around. It wasn't necessarily things that I needed, it was just things. And I think in that moment, I wish I would have known about things like Vinted or eBay or Depop or whatnot, or TikTok Shop or whatever it was, so that I could just jump on that straight away. But I don't think Vinted was around in that time. I think Vinted started in like 2021 or 2022. So as a student, where I kind of needed apps like this the most, it just wasn't around, or I hadn't discovered it at this point. So either of those things. But that, like I said, that was the moment where I was like, oh, actually, I wasn't even thinking about reselling or dropshipping at this point. It was more of just, oh, how can I clear some of the stuff that I've got down? I can obviously sell it online to people, because there's obviously people online that want to get stuff cheap or want to get stuff basically free or get things in bundles. So the thought was there, but I couldn't find where to find places like this to sell. So yeah, that's when I kind of had my little moment, kind of around the COVID years. And then I think when I got back to where I am now, that's when I discovered things like Vinted and Depop. Depop for me hasn't been successful at all. You know, I list stuff on there and it stays. The only good thing I would say about that is that when you need to relist something, you just click relist and it just kind of deletes it and moves it straight to the top for you. But for me, Vinted, eBay and whatnot have been my three apps where I've just completely utilised. So yeah, Vinted, eBay, no selling costs. You just kind of list the item. People can send offers, people can buy straight away. You can do, with eBay, you can do an auction or you can do a buy it now. So with an auction, you could start it at a particular number and people just kind of bid amongst themselves. Or you do a buy it now where you just set a price. People can then offer down from that price, but it's at a set price or lower. And then with Whatnot, this is only something I've started on within the last, I think, couple of weeks at least. So that's like a live selling app. So it's not like Vinted or eBay where you have to list the items. You do have the option to do that, but you can also just kind of stand there, be on live, hold the items up, explain what the materials are, the sizes, the colours, if there's any dents or markings or anything like that. And then if people are interested, again, in that moment, you can either do the listing as a buy it now, or you can do it as a live auction where you just see people putting their offers in. And then, yeah, once you finish that show, basically, you've got to make sure you label and number all of the different things that are sold, so at least you can bundle it all up at the end. It creates you labels to basically send through the post office or the lockers. So that's all set up for you. You do have to pay a little bit of a cut. So if you sell something for £1, you may only get 73p, so you're paying the 17p to the app. But yeah, although there are fees, I think that's the app to kind of just get rid of everything that you don't need. If you just need to get rid of stuff just because, that's the app for that. If you actually want to try and make a bit of profit, things like Vinted, eBay, probably Depop if your algorithm works for it, are your best alternatives. But I'm probably sure I'll do a podcast just about all of those apps and how I've kind of used the apps and utilised the different resources available, and you know, some of the things that have gone well and some of the things that haven't gone so well. This is when I also kind of delved into what a wholesaler was. So I knew what a wholesaler was. You know, it's things like Homebase, B&Q, like just the general shops, but for things that could retail for a good price. So your wholesalers for clothes, your wholesalers for shoes, your wholesalers for sunglasses. So for me, I didn't really know what I was looking at, and I didn't really know what I was looking for, because at this point I'd cleared basically a lot of the stock I had down of my actual stuff. And then I think I had some things for friends, you know, lots of clothes, lots of dresses, dressing gowns, shoes, and stuff like that. And I thought, right, let me just get one bundle of clothing, a mixed bundle of just whatever, see if I can make profit on that. If I can, great, then I do it again. And I just wait until everything's gone before I buy something new, which that was kind of the aim, but I ended up getting a bale of items, getting another bale of items, having 4 or 5 people wanting me to sell stuff for them, then having my own stuff, then having some family want to drop stuff off, and then I bought some more clothes, and then I went on Vinted and, you know, found little bundles on there, and I was buying those as well. So in the end, I think I must have had about 700 items in where I am, and it just got very overwhelming. And at that point, I was like, I just need to get all this stuff sold. So a lot of it did sell, some of it in bundles, some of it was just literally listed for £1, so I didn't really make money on some of it. But a lot of the items that I got from the wholesaler bundle were great. So I think my very, very, very first bundle was off of eBay, and I can't remember what the account was because obviously I've converted into a new account now, and that's one thing I've done with my apps that I sell on. So I used to brand it as me, and now I've created accounts under the Clear Your Wardrobe name, basically. So eBay, I've got a brand new account. I've deleted my old one. Vinted, I've renamed myself to Clear Wardrobe, so I've got a nice little username there. I think it's actually Clear Wardrobe 123 because my Clear Wardrobe name has already been taken by someone else. Someone else already had that idea, and yeah, so I've now rebranded as myself. But yeah, this first bundle I got off eBay, I'm not sure why it was sold so cheap. I know it was all real, I know it was all genuine, but this individual, I think it was a bloke, selling like kids, women's and men's branded jumpers. So a mix of Adidas, a mix of Nike, and a mix of Slazenger. And I believe there was about 80, and it was like £30 or something. So I was like, right, okay, so if I work out £40 for 80, I need to sell them for £2 each. But he had 80 for £30. So I was like, right, that's quite good, because if I just sell 3 of them for a tenner, I've got my money back, and I've still got 77 jumpers that I can then flog off for at least £10 each. So I was like, right, let's do that. It's £30. I don't like spending money, but I know that there is profit to be made here. And I think at the beginning I wasn't really thinking too much about things like that. I think because this was my first bundle, I was thinking like, this is how much I need to spend, this is how much I need to make, this is how much I can earn. And yeah, I literally, within the first minutes of putting the items up, I had people buying them straight away. I think I actually listed all of them for at least £15-20 plus. So I sold 2, that was my £30 back, and I still had 78 left. So I was changing the prices because some of them were in absolutely fantastic condition. They looked brand new, they smelled great, the colours were fresh, no marks, no stains, no material loose or anything like that. So those ones I was actually listing for £40 or £50. I think the lowest on the good ones I think was around 30-32. So I had people offering me 30, 34, 32, 31, and I was like, yeah, accept. Bearing in mind I only needed to make £2 or £3 for each one. And then the ones that were kind of a bit of a lower quality, or you could see there was a tiny bit of material like flaking off. Again, when I say bad quality, it wasn't awful. It wasn't really noticeable unless you were someone like me who was the seller, who was obviously trying to get these things sold. So those, again, lowest probably 15 or 20. So again, I made quite a lot of money on all of those. I think I sold one of them to a friend for a £5. There was nothing wrong with the jumper. I just said to her I wasn't going to overcharge, so she got one as well. And I think there was 1 or 2 of them that I just got rid of for £1, just because at that point I didn't need them anymore. But yeah, I think that's the thing. So that initial bundle was fantastic. I don't know why the individual sold them so cheap. Maybe he just wanted to genuinely clear them out. He didn't want them to take up space. And then for someone like me, as a reseller, I've just kind of seen it at the right time, grabbed the bundle, and then made loads of money. So that was good to cover some bills for at least the next month. So that was my initial excitement stage, should I say, where I was like, oh, this is really interesting. The fact that I've been able to buy such a cheap bundle, the items are actually all genuine. I've had so many good reviews. My Vinted reviews are going up. I think I had obviously like 50 or 60 reviews, plus all the other random stuff I was selling for myself, my personal stuff, my friends, things I'd got online. So it was kind of a mix of it all. So I think I'd reached 100 reviews by this point. I was like, oh, this is really good. Let me aim for 1,000, which obviously now, thankfully, I've reached. And now I'm aiming for 2,000, which I'm on the way there. But yeah, so then I started reaching out to wholesalers. So I looked online. I think with a lot of the wholesalers, you've just got to make sure that you know what you're buying. A lot of them just say mixed bale of, I don't know, this many clothes, or 25 kilograms of this whatever. So I found a wholesaler, and yeah, so I had a little look, and they were doing mixed bales, 25 kilograms of men's clothes, 25 kilograms of women's clothes. I think it was £25 for 25 kilograms, which was fine. So I was like, right, let's just do that. So I got 1 bale of men's, 1 bale of women's. So that was £50. And again, all I needed to do was work out how many items I had in total, divide that by 50, and that's how much I needed to make per item. And I think, again, it worked out at like £1 or £2. So as long as everything was in great condition, just £1 or £2. But I think what I did, obviously I did film little videos and little bale openings and stuff for my YouTube channel, but that was before I created my brand, so I'm just going to leave that as is. But I think what I did is I did a little bale opening, so I had to cut it open. I didn't realise how tight they had been closed, because as soon as I cut the bag open, it all fell out on the floor, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of clothes here on the floor. So yeah, it just it was quite chaotic. But again, that's why I needed my own space. That's why I needed to be on my own, because then I can look through it myself and work out, right, these are the ones that are the best quality. You know, the material was shining, everything smells great, there's no holes, no gaps, no lumps. So put them onto one side. The ones that were alright, you know, had a little stain, little mark, whatever. And then the ones on the far left were just kind of the ones that were in not so good quality. Zips had fallen off. Hoodies were not the best quality. Material was flaking off. So that's what I did with my bales. So I think I ended up getting about 6 bales in total. Obviously not all at the same time. These were the first 2 as a little test. Gave it a few months, waited for everything to sell, then did another 2. Same thing again, and then another 2. And then I kind of stopped because I've now found other ways to bring in a little bit of extra income. So yeah, anyway, with these bales, I think the majority were in the good and great pile, most of them being in the great pile. And again, I was just, with these bales, you've got to remember they're second-hand bales. They're either things that they've just been imported from some country somewhere, or they're things that they've bought off other people to then resell on, or they just, you know, they import their bales to then make their own bales to sell them on as their brand, if that makes sense. So it's all very complicated. And yeah, so anyway, most of it was branded. You know, you had like Papaya, you had New Look, Next. So it was all the standard high street brands, but there was so much money to be made, and there was so much money made. You know, like I said, for those bales for particular, I just needed to make £2 each per item. And if that was 100 items, that's £200. But then again, if I was selling them for £5 each, that's 5 times 100, that's £500, just from a bale that initially cost me 20 quid. So yeah, it was a lot to work out, but I think what I did was every time I listed the item, I was like, right, so that's going to bring me up to a total of this. And every time I sold the item, I took that off of the initial £50 that I spent. So I had £50 and £50 written on my sheet, 50 for the men's, 50 for the women's. Oh, I sold a women's t-shirt for a tenner, so 50, cross it out, put 40, because I've obviously now got 10. And then, yeah, as soon as I got down to 0 on both, I was like, right, I don't need to track it anymore, because now I'm in the profit stage. I've made my £50 back, or I made my £20 back on each of the bales. Now I'm making profit. I don't really need to know how much I'm making, but I think in the end it was at least 100 and something in total. So by spending 50 and making over 112 or 115 or whatever, I've made basically double my money back, plus more, because there were a few items that were 15 quid or 20 quid. So, and that's the thing, when you get a bale, it is the luck of what you get, but you do find some hidden gems, and you can easily make your money back and profit. And yeah, you know, I think it was worth it. I think for me, having such a small space to do it all in and compact kind of forced me to get it all done quickly, to get it in and out of the flat as quickly as possible. And I think that's what you've got to think when it comes to getting stock, as I keep relating it to, or calling it. You kind of want the things in and out as soon as possible. You don't want things to just be stuck in a box, because then they'll get dirty, or then they'll get, you know, wet, or then they'll get, you know, dry or out of season, things like that. So I actually did this the other day as well. Bought a couple of things off one app. As soon as they arrived, worked out how much I spent, including the delivery fee, relisted it for a higher price, and both of those items are now not with me anymore. They've gone elsewhere. So yeah, I think it's one of those things of, you don't necessarily need to know. You don't need to know which suppliers to get stuff from. You just need to look at the stuff that they offer, the prices. Probably just go for the cheapest if you're going to do a wholesale bale or something like that, or look at the sale part. So look at the things that they've got on sale. So, you know, are there a bundle of items you could just grab at 3 quid that you think can sell at 15? It's all trial and error. You know, if it ends up becoming error, then at least you know not to get those sorts of things again. But I think with time, and I think now that because I've done this for 4 or 5 years, I know which items I can sell well, and I know which items I can list well. it's just about, taking the right photos, doing the right listing. And again, that's going to be a whole podcast within itself about how to actually do the listings and how to actually advertise and market the items. But to source the items, you just go through a wholesaler, charity shops, thrift shops, car boot sales, friends and family. They may have stuff that you can just test. If they've got 3 items to sell, just give it a test. Take photos of it, list it, sell it, see if it sells, and then if it does, your algorithm will start bringing in people that like that sort of thing. And then you can start bringing in some good reviews to make you actually look like an accurate and professional seller, basically. I think when you've got no profile photo, no bio, no information, people don't really want to sell to you and don't want to buy off you because they're not really sure how genuine you are. But if you've got a profile photo, a title, a headline, little description, hey guys, this is what I'm offering, this is what I'm selling, then people are more likely to kind of come to your shop and buy stuff from you, or allow you to buy stuff from them. Kind of going back on to what I was saying before, I started then selling for friends and family. So as well as my own stock that I had in my wardrobe, I had a lot of different things that I was selling. So back to this same wholesaler, once I got rid of the male and female clothes, I think I tried 2 completely different bundles. So there was a bundle of tie-dye t-shirts. So this is a mix of small, medium, large, mostly unbranded. All of them had kind of like cool designs on them, like rainbows, splashes, tie-dye, all that sort of thing. And again, I think it was 50 for 20. So, £20 for the 50. So again, a lot of them did sell quite quickly. £10 for this, £15 for that, £18 for this. A couple 8, 5, 2. So it was a bit of a mix of prices. Again, I made some profit on those. And I think out of all of them, I actually ended up deciding to keep 2. So being able to make profit on the 48 and be able to keep some of that stock, that was kind of a good thing as well. So it's almost like I was shopping and profiting at the same time. And then the other bundle I got from this place, so I had my first 2, which was male and female. My second 2 was tie-dye and women's shoes. Now, as much as I loved the majority of the shoes, those shoes took up so much space in my flat. I didn't think I was ever going to get rid of half of them, let alone all of them. So thankfully, every single one of those pairs of shoes now has gone. I've sold them to someone somewhere for whatever price, and I think it was shoes are always a bit of a risk because you never know if they're going to sell, because I think shoes and dresses are the 2 most difficult things that you can probably sell, at least for me. As a man, selling women's stuff is difficult because I'm not really sure what things are going to fit a woman or what shoes people are interested in. I just kind of wing it a little bit. So for me, the best things that I was able to sell were men's clothes, accessories, Indian chiffon shawls, so whether they're branded or unbranded, kind of like the scarves that women wear, UV 400 glasses, branded jumpers and t-shirts and things like that, so either unisex or women's or whatever, and then like print t-shirts, graphic t-shirts, bras I think were quite a surprisingly good one as well, things that people were selling as brand new for £1, buying and being able to sell them for a tenner, bikinis and swimwear and that sort of thing. So I haven't really had much of that. I think it was just I kind of had one of them and it sold very well. So it's like, okay, well there's definitely a gap in the market for having those items, whether to drop ship or to grab a few bargains in the future. But again, it's just kind of dipping and delving and just working out what sells. So for example, the glasses, I've seen them retailed on eBay for like £30 or £40. So if I can source them for a £5, that's £20, £30, £40 profit for those. Again, the chiffon shawls available on all different apps are at £1, and I was having people buy them for £15, £20, £25. It's like a thin polyester shawl basically, but because they look a certain way, or because they look colourful and they look festive and spiritual and whatever, people just buy them at silly prices. So yeah, and I think one of the comments I used to have is, oh Brandon, you're a scammer. It's like, no, I'm not a scammer. That's the whole idea of selling and reselling. You buy stuff cheap, you sell it expensive, and you make profit. These people don't need to know you bought it for £1, and the people you've bought it off for £1 don't need to know that you're going to sell it on for 20. It's just kind of common sense. You want to get things for as cheap as possible, and you want to sell it for as high as possible. Otherwise, what's the point trying to be a seller or a reseller? If you're buying something for £2, going into all the effort and selling it for £2.50, there's no point being a reseller. Yeah, you're making 50p, but you could be making so much more. And then, yeah, like I said, once I started selling all of that stock, again, like I said, the shoes were an absolute nightmare. I did manage to break through a little bit with the use of apps like Whatnot. So I had about 9 or 10 pairs of New Balance trainers. I bought them for about £1 or £2 each. So New Balance is an amazing clothing and shoe brand, but eventually I ended up selling them for £5 each. Most of them to one seller, but I still made a little bit of profit on all of those. And again, thankfully, all of that is out of the flat. And then with the women's shoes, it was a mix of like heels, it was a mix of sandals, flip-flops, things like that. And yeah, again, a lot of them sold on Whatnot because that's the live auction where you kind of hold the items up and people just buy them then and there. And again, a lot of the pairs of shoes were not great quality. You know, they had holes, they had rips, they had marks, they had stains. So at that point, it was just, it was a random bail. I didn't know what I was going to get. It was just a mix of 30 pairs of shoes. So when I saw them all, I was like, right, this pair are damaged, this pair are damaged, this pair are damaged, this pair look weird. But I did make a few golden sales. You know, I sold one pair of, I think they were called 7 dials. That was about a tenner. There's another brand called, what was the other one called? He had 7 dials. That was like chunky shoes. There was another brand called Glaze. So I sold them for a tenner, I think, on eBay. So, and they all sold in different places. You know, I sold some of the shoes on Vinted, some of them on eBay, and some of them live on Whatnot. So it was a bit of a mix of items, but they all sold, and thankfully every single one of those pairs of shoes now is gone. But I know that unless I'm getting an amazing deal on an amazing pair of shoes, I probably will be staying away from the shoes. And yeah, like I said, just listing and cross-listing on different platforms, that's a pro within itself because, you know, you're kind of sharing audiences with other people. You're being able to have different people view your stuff. So yeah, cross-listing, cross-posting, and, you know, slightly changing up the descriptions or the prices and things like that allow different people to see what it is you're selling. And most recently, I've actually got into dropshipping, which I knew what it was. But again, like I said, in my younger years, it was something that I didn't want to get involved with. I didn't actually understand much what it was other than the fact of not having stock. So I didn't really get shown or told or explained to how it worked or what it actually was. But again, I was too young to be dealing with things like that, along with everything else I had in my life. So now that I've got a bit of a break, you know, now that I've got a bit of breathing room and some time to breathe and think, like with my brain, yeah, I decided to look into it a little bit more. So I'm in a couple of reselling groups and selling groups and dropshipping groups on different apps. And there was this one group where I think someone said, oh, I've got some stock, you know, I'm looking for people that can be like my dropship agent. They list, you know, the items. I then send the items, and then you buy it off me on warehouse price and then make whatever profit you want to make on it when the items sell. So yeah, I think this random bloke messaged, I messaged this random bloke because he said, oh, message me, I've got some stock. I was like, okay, cool, let's see how this goes. Anyway, we started talking. He basically has a load of bedding, duvets, quilts, things like that. And yeah, he just said, right, well, this is the plan, this is how it all works. So in short, basically, I would list the items that he's got. So he would send me the photos of the stock that he has in the warehouse. I would list those items. And as soon as I make the sale, I purchase the item off him for wholesale price, and then obviously once he's sent the item and once the item's been delivered, I then obviously keep the full profit. So for example, the first one that we did was some like double skulls bedding or whatever. So I think warehouse price from him was £6. I sold the first one for 30. So I sent him the £6. He sent the item and sent me proof of him packing it and wrapping it and sending it and sticking the label on and getting rid of it. The lady obviously accepted the order. I got my 30, so I basically made £24 profit from that one item without having the item. So I think when you're doing drop shipping like that, the most important thing is being able to have trust in the person who is going to be sending the items, because he could easily have just sent air. You know, he could have just sent like a random book, and then obviously I get a complaint, I get, you know, a low score of rating, and then I decide not to work with him again. But again, what I was thinking is, why would he do that? Why would he ruin his reputation that we don't even have because he's actually got stuff he needs to sell? So that was the initial risk, and that was the, you know, oh my goodness, I actually now have to send him money, but it's fine because I've got an extra £24 coming back in profit my side. So yeah, I had that open conversation with him at first, and he was sending me photos of all the different items, the different sizes, what the warehouse price was from his side, and then obviously from my side, just listing it as high as possible, just to get whatever profit possible. So yeah, we've been working together now for the last couple of weeks, and again, he sends me hundreds of different bedding and size photos of all these different materials and patterns and designs. And yeah, I think at the moment I'm on a restriction because I've posted so many items and listings. They have restricted me, so I'm now using another app for now, just to kind of bypass the 24-hour ban. But yeah, so that's what I've kind of been doing in terms of my dropshipping, and that's obviously why I created my little business, the whole website and email and business card and things like that. Just because I am now doing this kind of through my company or my slightly like business side hustle thing. It's not a full-time salary. It is just literally a side hustle which I'm doing for a bit of fun, and if it brings in a bit of money because I can help other people sell their stuff and their stock, then absolutely that's fine. I've already had one of the ladies at work come to me and just say, I've got a couple of dresses to sell, got a couple of handbags to sell, do you want to help me out next week? And I've just said, yeah, absolutely fine. Like, I'll take all the stuff home, I'll do a live show, I'll see what I can sell in the live show first. Anything that doesn't sell in the live show that I can't just send within the night, I'll relist on a couple of other apps, and then yeah, just see which ones sell first. And all I've got to do is keep them in a box, keep them in a bag, and just wait for them to sell, really. So yeah, that's that. But in terms of my plans for the future and my plans for the future with selling, reselling and dropshipping, I think I'm obviously always going to be careful. I'm not going to be someone to just spend loads of money on things because I'm always stingy and I hate spending money. But I think in the place that I am now, I'm definitely a lot more in the profit than I am in the loss. I think I've made enough money on the things that I was making money off that I was kind of allowing myself to just get rid of everything else cheap just because it was taking up space. So, there's lots of items that I've had to say goodbye to. Jackets, jumpers, tie-dye t-shirts, ones that I was going to keep that I decided to just not keep. My Primark high heels that I used to wear for Pride events or for, going to Brighton or going to parties and things like that, just to kind of get me off the floor a little bit. So, there are a lot of items that I have sold, got rid of, moved on and, given to new owners. But I think that's the excitement of evolution, being able to just have as few items as possible, but know that I wear every single one of them, than have 30 jackets, 30 jumpers, 50 t-shirts, and then still wear the same 3. So that's kind of me being true with myself of, am I actually going to wear this t-shirt? If the answer is no, it doesn't need to be in the cupboard anymore. Am I actually going to wear this shirt? Well, if it's 3 sizes too small, then probably not. So those are the type of things and conversations I've been having with myself to obviously just, know whether to get rid of those items or not. So that, I think, for me, is my plan. The plan is making sure that everything in my wardrobe I actually wear, everything in my flat I actually use. I'm taking on a few other exciting projects. So I've got a documentary coming out soon. I've got some samples and some promotional stuff that I'll be doing on TikTok soon once I've hit 1,000 followers, going back into the requesting free samples and promoting the items in a promotional video. And then obviously once I start making sales there, that's a little bit of extra money there, which I can then use towards stock and wholesales and stuff like that. So everything's kind of blending together, and also that gives me more visibility of my business as well. So once I've got 1,000 followers, I can put my ClearYourWardrobe link in my bio rather than just kind of having it as part of my description. And yeah, there we go. Just get more people knowing about what I do. I don't care if it goes viral. I don't care if it, sticks with the 1,000 people that end up seeing my stuff, but just being more vocal about the things that I'm interested in. I love music, I love sports, I love going to Pride events, I love selling and reselling, and obviously now my new interest of dropshipping, which again, you just have to find the right people, and you just need to find out how people are advertising it. This guy just said to me, I've got a warehouse of stuff looking for people to help me sell it, but is there a name for that? Is there a phrase for that I could search to get other people on board as well, so at least I can help other people sell? And that's kind of what I probably end up being, like a third-party reseller or a third-party dropshipper, where I have my full-time job, my other creative interests, and then this is kind of like an extra hobby or a hustle. So yeah, that's kind of my plan for the future and what I plan to do. Will I relocate somewhere else? Will I get a new job? Will I end up doing this sort of thing full time? I don't know. The answer to all of those is I'm not sure. No comment. But yeah, I will go wherever opportunities take me, and that's why I'm trying to do as much as I can for myself, to give myself as much opportunity in whatever field or job I end up going into, to say, oh, well, I've got this and this experience, and I've met this person and that person, and I know this person from this company. So yeah, make myself as employable as possible, and also give myself as many different backup options as possible. There's lots of people that say have your backup plan B, your backup plan C, your backup plan D. I've got backup plan Z. I've got so many plans of these are all the different businesses and all the different opportunities I've got lined up and currently active, because you never know which one you're going to need to fall back on in the future. And I think I've written it down here as well, but I just basically put be relaxed and do what you enjoy as kind of a message to myself. And that's why I've started this podcast, because this is kind of like my spam podcast where I talk about reselling and selling and dropshipping, my introduction to the world. Are there any great items that I found that I've then resold on? So I think this is going to be my sort of spam podcast. But if you did want to see my actual brand, my actual podcast, I've got my Is That More Random podcast, where I just talk to guests about random stuff, and I've got my Is That Random Music podcast, where I talk about music and shows and things more relating to music and TV, basically. More music really. The TV one's kind of still on my other channel, but yeah, this is my selling and reselling podcast. So yeah, if you did enjoy what you have heard, then don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Like I said, this is just an introduction to myself. This business is pretty much just run by myself. There are people that will dibble and dabble and give me some help and assistance as and when needed, but I think primarily it is my business, it's my baby, it's something that I've been working on for the last couple of months and hopefully in the years to come. So yeah, if you did enjoy this little podcast episode, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. If you have any topics you'd like me to speak about based on everything I've spoken about today, drop me a message or drop me a comment down below. Let me know what sorts of things you'd like me to talk about. No comment or topic is out of bounds. Like I said, as long as it's relating to selling, reselling, dropshipping, creating content, making money, doing samples, wholesalers, drop shipping and stuff like that. Just anything to do with any of that, and I will try my best to do a podcast about any of those. And if you're a seller, a reseller, a dropshipper yourself, an influencer, creator, musician, podcaster, dancer, model, whatever it is, whatever field you're in, if you feel like you would need help with selling and reselling your items, you want some assistance, or you'd like to do a test of like doing a live show or something with me, then again, let me know down below. And if you want to come on and have a chat, again, let me know as well. And I'd love to have whoever wants to come on as a guest, wherever you're based around the world. So until my next podcast and until my next little bit of funny content on this channel, don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, share, subscribe, and let people know who I am and where we are. And until then, thank you for listening and goodbye.